All of you here know the meaning of the three gunas: sattva, the elevating, the uplifting, refined, the goodness, the truth, quality in nature. And then on the other end of the spectrum, that quality of tamas, that tamasic quality which is downward pulling, grossening, darkening, inertia making, holding us back, holding us earthbound, holding us tied to our lower nature. And then in the middle, that quality of rajas, the energetic, the activating quality, which can either activate us in the downward motion or it can activate us in the upward motion toward the sattvic qualities. That, in a nutshell, is the evolutionary plan, part of the evolutionary plan of our great gurus and their wish for each one of you. Bring out of ourselves those sattvic qualities. Our world greatly needs them, greatly needs them. Think of it like this. You know, here we are on this path. We're trying to free ourselves. We're trying to spiritually purify and refine ourselves so that more and more of those sattvic qualities can manifest in our lives. And what that means is gradually extricating ourselves from the tamasic clutches of Maya, of delusion. One by one, we pull them out of ourselves, and as we do, little by little, we rise. Little by little, our consciousness elevates. Little by little, we become pure, we become more yogic, we become more filled with that light and joy and love of God and gurus. But in that delusion that we find ourselves, here's the point. We didn't reason ourselves into delusion, and we can't reason ourselves out of delusion either. We didn't think ourselves by the logical process whereby the conclusion was that here we are in this state of body consciousness, this state of a tamasic bondage to the materiality. We didn't think ourselves into that, and we can't reason nor think ourselves out of it. We need something higher. You know, how did we get into this delusion? Guruji explains so beautifully, so simply and scientifically that it's that descent of consciousness on the river, on the vehicle of prana, of life energy, that enters in the newly created body with the soul, flows down the spine, out to the senses. It's that prana, it's that life energy that ties us to delusion. And we can read all the philosophical treatises in the world, and it's not going to loosen the bonds of that pranic bondage in the body. Thank goodness we have the Kriya Yoga science. Thank goodness we have this science of pranayama, whereby we can master the life energy in the body, whereby we can take the breath, the consciousness, the concentration, the willpower, and get a hold of that prana in the body and use it to gradually free ourselves from delusion. So we can't think our way out of it. We can certainly meditate our way out of it. We can certainly use the key of pranayama, the key of Kriya Yoga, to free ourselves, to purify ourselves, to enter into that divine state of freedom that we're all yearning for. Kriya Yoga, one aspect of it that I want to touch on in connection with what we've been talking about today. Kriya Yoga, spiritually speaking and psychologically speaking and even physically speaking, is one of the great purifiers known to humanity. It brings that purification. It brings that awakening of sattva. It brings that freedom from the tamasic qualities that are embedded in our material nature, our lower nature, our human nature, all these things that run counter to what we as devotees want to be able to express, that we want to be able at the end of each day to lay at the feet of our Gurudev and at the feet of the Lord. Kindness, loyalty, respect, devotion, remembrance of the Lord, remembrance of the Guru, doing what we can to help others, to love others, to serve others. And countering that are those forces of greed, of anger, of hurtfulness, of arrogance and pride. Those are those tamasic qualities. So listen to, you all know this. You who are Kriya Yogis, there are in this gathering here and also in our online Sangam out there around the world, joining us by the video link. There are Kriya Yogis here who have been deeply practicing that pranayama technique for years, decades, 30, 40, 50. I don't even know what the upper limit is, but many decades. And you know what happens. You know what happens when you sit quietly and you prepare the body and you lift the consciousness to that point between the eyebrows and deeply practice the Kriya technique. Deeply practice, and as the consciousness, and more specifically, as the prana, as the life force gets interiorized, what happens? What happens? And we feel in the spine. We feel in our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual natures. We feel the awakening of those elevating qualities. We feel the awakening of those sattvic qualities. Just in a few minutes that can change. Why? Because we're just moving that life force, moving that divine energy, that divine prana up and down through the chakras. Even a tiny bit of awakening of those spiritual centers bestows on us a greater sense of what we really are. Remember, Guruji said the definition of self-realization is that we have to improve our knowing. That's what Kriya does. You take that current as taught in the technique and you move it up and down the spine a few times or many times even over the course of a period of meditation. And as those chakras, as those cerebrospinal centers are just even touched a little bit by that current of divine prana and consciousness and devotion, we improve our knowing. We begin to know, I'm not this body, I'm not these emotions, I'm not these moods and desires and habits. I'm a being of freedom, I'm a being of wisdom, I'm a being of kindness. I think one of the most valuable things is I'm a being of hope. Isn't it? Don't you feel that? You sit down and you may be worried or distressed by the heaviness of the world, those forces of tamas that weigh heavily on the consciousness. And you do Kriya, and what happens? You become lighter, you become freer, that the weight of the world is no longer so much there, and you feel, yes, there is hope. I feel hope, I feel optimism, I feel, as Guruji said there at the beginning of this talk, I feel ready to take on the world with that consciousness of being a divine warrior, a divine conqueror.